This is Jennie Allen, and you are listening to the Made for This podcast.
As the kids get older, I feel like time goes faster. It feels overwhelming to figure out where to put all of the sweet little stories or the ways that they say words that are funny or cute or pictures. So we are really, really excited to tell you guys about Duncan & Stone Paper Co. because they have solved this problem for busy moms like us. Because I just need a little help sometimes knowing what to write. Like if you put me down in front of a sweet family heirloom book, I wouldn't even know where to start. But with Duncan & Stone, they've got you covered. So they have simple guided prompts and space for photos so you can keep memories really simply. Every stage of life has moments that you don't want to forget, which is why they have journals for everyone. So they have travel journals, reading journals, childhood memory books. They truly have something for everybody, especially this time of year when you need some sweet gifts for grandparents or friends. These beautiful, high-quality journals are gorgeous. There's a lot of journals out there that can help you share stories, but Duncan & Stone's feel unique because their books are really, really beautiful. So you want to put them on your coffee table. Unlike a lot of high-end stationery products, they have intentionally priced their journals and products so that capturing your life experiences doesn't have to break the bank. Duncan & Stone journals will absolutely be something that we'll cherish for years to come, and we want you to experience them for yourself. Right now, we have a special offer for listeners. Get 20% off your first order with promo code MADEFORTHIS. And did I mention that they offer free shipping on any order over $49? Head to duncanandstone.com to start your memory-making journey today. And don't forget to use promo code MADEFORTHIS to get 20% off your first order.
Well, guys, this is such a treat today. We have Lysa TerKeurst in the house, the queen herself. I'm so excited to talk about this subject too, Lysa, because you have lived this. I mean, it is beautiful when a writer is brave enough to just write out of their guts of what they're living. And you've done that again and again and again. And I actually want to start by just asking you a fellow writer question. Does that get exhausting? Like, wouldn't it be easier if we just wrote books about things that people needed to know? Like, this is from the depths of you.
I know. Jennie, it's so funny. People often ask me, like, how in the world are you so brave to talk about these really hard things that you walk through? But I think the kind of writer that I am, I don't like to write just factual information. I like digging deep into my soul and wrestling out issues that need to be dealt with. And for me, like, that's my art. That is my expression. And so I don't want to keep dealing with hard things. It's not like, oh, yay, bring on another hard thing. It's not that at all. But if I'm going to have to walk through these hard things, part of how I heal is this writing process and bringing along other people on the journey. And some of my most favorite days at work are when I'm about to start a writing project and I just put something out like on my Instagram and say, hey, I want to sit with some of you face to face on Zoom. If you can come in person, come in person. But I want to hear how you wrestle through these things. I want to hear what your struggles. And for this book, it was on trust. Like, I want to hear how trust issues play out for you. I want to hear, have you been shamed for your trust issues? Do you feel hopeless in them? Have you found that even if you haven't walked through a divorce like me, does this still deeply impact your life when you go through it with friends or other family members? And I want to hear their stories, and I want us to share heart to heart, because so much of my ministry life is me holding the microphone and an audience listening. But my favorite days are when I lay down the microphone and I just get to sit heart to heart with people. Man, that's really what drives so many of my messages, are those early conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. I do feel like I wouldn't reflect nearly as much on my life and what's happened and what's happening if I didn't have to sit down and write about it. But it is exhausting still to relive some of this. So if you don't know, the new book that Lysa has coming out is I Want to Trust You, But I Don't. Best title, so true. Everywhere I look, this is true for me. This is true for others. Let's just start with high level, why this topic for you?
I think with the topic of trust, it became very apparent because I was starting to find myself getting skeptical of all people, not just people who've hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
but all people, because I just started feeling like, man, I really thought this person and this person, and this person were really good people. They had my best interests at
Yeah.
heart. And when they devastated me or betrayed me or, whatever happened, it just made me feel like, does everyone have a hidden agenda? Is
Mm.
everyone just out for themselves? And does anyone really deeply care? Is anyone really willing to be in a relationship where we seek each other's highest good, not just our own selfish gain? I didn't want to lose that good part of me that dives deep into relationships and is willing to take the risk and trust. And I didn't want to lose that. But at the same time, I had to start recognizing that there's a big difference between foolish trust and wise trust. And I wanted to have wise trust. I just didn't know how.
Do you feel like when you began to interview people and you began to ask other people about this, did you feel like it always came out of hurt? Or is it just a cynicism that grows in the world we live in? Like, I hurt people, you hurt people. Where is it coming from for people most often?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it is hurt, like they've had their heart broken. Other times it's from disappointment that starts to turn into disillusionment.
Mm,
Like you have a friend who constantly makes plans with you, but then at the last minute breaks plans with you. That's less of a hurt and more of an annoyance and more of like, man, that's so inconsiderate. Or you have a coworker that has oversold their abilities, their capabilities. And so you really thought you could count on them. But then when they turn a project in, you wind up having to rewrite the whole thing yourself because it's just not at all in keeping with what you thought you would agree to with that person. And so sometimes it's hurt. Sometimes it's disillusionment and disappointment. Sometimes it's just extreme frustration because you thought you could count on someone and you can't. And so it comes in different varieties that affect us in different ways. Not always the depth of our heart, but always our sense of well-being, because we want other people to do what they say they're going to do, be who they say they're going to be, and treat us in ways that are kind and respectable. And that's just not the way all relationships work now.
let's go to the end first. Let's go to the vision and you today and having walked through all this. And I know it's hard fought for you. What does that look like for you to just enjoy trusting people and the freedom that that's brought for you today?
Okay. So if we go all the way to the end, it has helped me remember that I don't want to live my life down, like reduce my life down to the limitations of living hurt.
Mm,
What happened in my previous marriage and in some other relationships that were fallout in that same season,
mm,
those weren't necessarily my fault, but it can become my problem
yeah.
if I refuse to move forward and I refuse to take the risk in future relationships because I was not made to live in isolation. You are not made to live in isolation. And if we're going to be in connection with other people, every connection takes a risk. So we want to take wise risk, but we do want to have relationships. And
Mm,
for me, I think the biggest difference for me, if we just want to do a spoiler alert all the way to the end, is I thought when I walked through my divorce, Jenny, I was signing up to be alone the rest of my life. Now, not technically alone. I have amazing kids that I'm
yeah.
very involved in their life and they're involved in mine. I have amazing ministry friends. I have a vibrant ministry life where I love my work, all of that. I have great friends, but I really thought I was signing up to do life solo, like without my life partner. And that became so overwhelmingly daunting to me because I didn't want that, but I also didn't want to ever risk trusting someone on the level that you have to trust them in order to get remarried. And so there's a whole chapter in I Want to Trust You, But I Don't that's titled, And I Didn't Want to Be Alone. Like, I don't want to trust you, but I also don't want to be alone. I don't want to take the risk of dating, but I also don't want to be alone. I don't ever want to have my integrity attached to someone else's choices that I have no say so over, and I don't want to be alone, you know? So it just became this conundrum for me. But okay, here's the spoiler. Eventually, I did date, and eventually, I did get remarried. And I am so, so grateful to be where I'm at. But I think it's also important to recognize that no relationship can fix anything inside of us that's broken. And so I'm grateful that it took a long season. There was a long season where I didn't date anyone. There was a long season where I just knew if I wanted to attract someone healthy, then I had to spend that season alone. But while the betrayal from my past relationship was life altering, it didn't have to be life ruining. And I'm so grateful that I kept on walking ahead.
When you look around, I know when I'm working on a project, I kind of see the world through that project. When you look around right now, what do you see as the issue? Like when you meet people and they bring up this subject or you bring it up with them, what's the real core thing that just keeps them from ever trusting again?
Well, I think it's the risk of getting hurt again.
Yeah.
You know, the truth of the matter is, I couldn't make the promise of this book. Here's a foolproof plan, that
Right.
if you do A, B, and C, you're never going to get your heart broken again. But what
Right.
I could do is say, hey, I'm going to give you every tool possible to not just heal, but to also walk forward. There's a story that I tell in the book that I always smile when I tell it because this is the vision that I want to give someone is I had gone to the beach with a couple of friends and I went to put ice in my little cooler because I like to make a sandwich, have my water bottle, have my little soda, put it in my little cooler, walk down to the beach, sit in a chair, read my book, and then have my little snacks. But ice is really important because I like cold things cold, right? Well, when I went to get the ice out of the ice maker, there was no ice that would come out. And I was so frustrated. I
Mm.
literally stood in the kitchen with my fist in the air and I was like, this makes me so mad because if he wouldn't have cheated on me, then maybe we wouldn't have gotten a divorce. And if we didn't get a divorce, he would be here. And if he was here, he would know how to fix the ice maker. But now here I am and everything else that's happened on top of that, I don't have ice and I can't fix the ice maker. I was so immature, but that's just real life. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
having an out of proportion reaction to the situation at
Sure.
hand. But then all of a sudden, I stood there and I go, okay, but what if I could? What if I could fix that ice maker? And so I Googled instructions and I'm terrible at following written instructions. So that didn't work. But then I YouTubed it. And Jenny, as God is my
No.
witness,
No.
I fixed
You
the
didn't.
ice maker. And
Girl,
when that
I've
ice
I've
came
never been
down
more proud of you.
from that ice maker and fell into my little cooler, it was a victory of epic proportions, not just because I fixed the ice maker, but because I refused to reduce my life down to the limitations of living hurt. And there's two words that I started to really look for in my vocabulary: can't and don't. And anytime I would say I can't, I would ask myself, is that a true statement? Have you tried it? I mean, sometimes it's true. You can't. I can't go lift a, vehicle outside with my muscles in my arms. Can't do that. But many times I was saying can't when it wasn't really a can't. It was just I felt so overwhelmed not knowing how to do something that I just didn't even take the time to see if I actually could.
Mm.
And so that was a big moment for me of walking forward. At that same trip, my two friends that came with me, they had different definitions of what it meant to go to the beach. So one of my friends was just like me. Going to the beach means we take our little cooler down there, we eat our little snacks, we read a book, we watch the waves, okay? But the third friend, when she said go to the beach, she meant take boogie boards down to the beach
No.
and
No.
jump
Who is
and
this?
play
Someone
in
I
the
know. I know it.
ocean. Play in the ocean. And so I looked at her,
No.
I was like, Oh no,
You don't get to come.
I don't do oceans. Like, I don't. There are sharks that eat people, shells that cut your feet, and jellyfish that sting you. I do not do oceans. And she was like, okay, well, we'll see. And so when we're walking down to the beach, she was carrying her boogie board, but not just one boogie board. She was carrying 3. And we got down there, and me and my other reader friend, we sit in our chair, and the third friend goes and places a boogie board in front of me, in front of the second friend, and then she takes her boogie board and goes and jumps in the ocean. And I said, I don't do oceans. But then I caught myself saying, don't. And I
Yeah.
thought, but what if I did? And before my cautious brain could override all of my thinking, I grabbed the boogie board and I went and I jumped in the ocean. It was disastrous. The wave flipped me over. My bathing suit bottoms came down. Nothing about it felt normal or right in that moment, but I stayed and I played in that ocean. And for an hour, I had no problems.
Yeah.
And it really profoundly impacted me. That's what it's like when you've had your trust broken and you're terrified to move forward. But in small little ways, you start to prove to yourself that you are brave. And
Yeah.
hey, if you don't want to be in another relationship, so be it.
Mm.
But don't say you don't want to be in another relationship when secretly inside you do want to be in a relationship,
Wow.
but you're afraid.
That is so good. Like, at least be honest with it. Yeah. So let's talk about discernment, because you had to figure this out. You had to figure out how, not just in your own soul and how you would ever trust anybody again, but what would it look like about who you would trust and how you would decide? What did that discernment look like?
Well, here's the beautiful thing about discernment. It's a gift from God that through the Holy Spirit, He will reveal to us this gentle knowing beyond the facts. So we have the facts, but then there's gaps in the facts. And so the Holy Spirit will give us this feeling of like, or you know. The problem with discernment is that it doesn't always give you all the details. It's just like this little pause of like, yeah, this is what you need to look into more, or no, you're okay, right? And so for me, my discernment had gotten really messed up because I thought that I had really, really good discernment. I had a pretty good proven track record
Mhm.
until the person I love the most in the world betrayed me, and I didn't see it coming. And so then I started to doubt my own discernment, and that can really start to mess with you. But I was not only doubting my own discernment, Jenny, I think what was really happening is I felt betrayed by God.
Mm.
And I thought, how can I trust a God who saw what was happening and didn't do anything to stop it? How can I trust a God that, like, it appears as if the people who hurt me are just getting away with it?
Mm.
And so it was so much more than just the discernment piece. It was, I wonder if my discernment is broken, but even more than that, I wonder if God didn't give me the discernment that I needed. And I wonder if God just allowed this, and I can't reconcile that with who I know God to be.
Yeah.
And so it was so much more than just having skepticism of other people. I also found myself overly cautious with God and so unsure that God would actually come through for me. And I started having more faith in my fears coming true than in God coming through for me.
Thank you to Simple Modern, our sponsor who offers premium quality drinkware and other mobility-driven products for adults and kids. Check out simplemodern.com/madeforthis, where every Made for This listener can get 20% off all of Jenny's favorite Simple Modern products. I think I was today years old when I learned that Simple Modern does custom bulk orders. So the minimum order for a custom cup, custom tumbler is only $24. So think about all of your PTA groups, teachers, nonprofit events, sports teams, soccer teams, and especially as the holidays come closer, you need a one and done gift shopping trip. Imagine giving the best water bottles on the market to all of your teachers this year, or spoiling your Bible study. The possibilities are endless, and the best part is Simple Modern gives away 10% of all profits, which means they've given away more than $10 million to more than 1,000 nonprofits in less than 10 years. They make products that are best in the market that you can take with you everywhere you go, and they're trying to bring good to the world too. Simple Modern, they are just good everywhere. Go to simplemodern.com/madeforthis to see an entire page of Jennie's Simple Modern favorites. Her entire collection is 20% off, which is an exclusive for Simple Modern's Made for This fans. No code is even necessary. Visit simplemodern.com/madeforthis, and the code is automatically applied when you add Jennie's favorites to your cart.
You know, this is such a hard one because at the end of the day, you could do it all right. You could trust the Lord. You could be wise in your discernment, and that person still cheat, make horrible decisions. I've watched people I love go through this, and there is just at some point a decision of I'd rather hope, I'd rather trust. I mean, it's kind of every, movie, right? That is good is there's a tension, and then at some point they jump, or at some point they feel again, and they open their heart to it. But how did you reconcile that specific thing of just knowing I'm going to jump again, I'm going to trust again, but there was no guarantee. There is no guarantee.
That's right. Well, with God specifically, I had to get to the place where I could recognize that God has good in mind always, but his definition of good may be different than my definition of good.
Mm,
And different doesn't make it bad, it just makes it different.
yeah.
And so I have had to get a whole lot better about making all the suggestions that I make to God in my prayer life. Like, God, don't you see if you did this and this and then, that? And I don't think there's anything wrong. I think God delights in any conversation that we have with him. But I think it's important to end each of those times with prayer by recognizing, but God, you know more. And because your ways are higher and your thoughts are higher, I'm going to trade my will for thy will because I'm so confident you're going to come through for me. Just help me to be brave enough to receive whatever you have in my future with enough trust and enough faith to walk through it, even if it doesn't feel good right now.
Yeah.
And so I had to wrestle through that with God. And there's 2 whole chapters in the book
Yeah.
about those very things. But with trusting people, it was crucial for me to give people the tools to be able to appropriately assess red flags and understand where the roots of
Yeah.
distrust were really coming from.
Let's talk about those. So talk about some of the red flags that are really clear to you now.
Okay, well, a big one, there's 11 of them. So I wish we had all day. We would just dive right into all 11 of these red flags because they're fascinating and they're super fun to talk about. But one of the main ones that I love to talk about is incongruity. And I'm just going to read you the definition that I wrote for incongruity in the book. It says you may be picking up on incongruity when who the other person says they are isn't in line with what they actually do. Their words don't match the way they actually live on a day-to-day basis. They want people to perceive them in one way, but then they act in a completely different way. This incongruity is something that is a major red flag to me. Now, I have to decide what am I going to do with that red flag,
Right.
right? It's not just enough to perceive it, but then I have a whole list of choices that we can make if we pick up on this red flag, because if we don't address a red flag in real time, red flags don't get better on their own.
Yeah.
And they can so easily become a serious root of distrust, where the longer that it takes root in us, the less likely we will be to ever trust that person
Mm,
again. And, I think more relationships die, not because we attempt to have some of the harder conversations, seeking clarity and, trying to get curious, not furious about why we're experiencing the incongruity in this other person that we are. But I'm convinced more relationships die, not because we attempt to have those hard conversations, but because we refuse to have those conversations.
mm.
And then roots of distrust just dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we find ourselves just distancing from that person. Look, distrust may be the wisest choice we make with some people,
That's right.
but it shouldn't be the choice we make with all people.
How did grace factor into this project and into your own life as you were working through this subject?
I had to recognize there's a big difference between someone making a mistake, which we all make, and that's what grace is built for. Look, we are all sinners. We all fall short. We all make mistakes. But there's a big difference between giving grace because it was a mistake someone made and foolishly staying connected to someone who has a repeated pattern of behavior that is destructive to themselves and possibly to those around them. And they are unwilling or incapable of making necessary changes. See, I think grace is what compelled Christ to lay down his life for people, right? His great desire to forgive us and to have grace for our brokenness. I mean, he was compelled by his love. But when Jesus laid down his life and he modeled that for us and instructed us to lay down our life for other people, Jesus laid down his life to accomplish a high and holy purpose. He did not lay down his life to enable bad behavior to continue.
Mhm.
And I think we have to
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's so funny because you're kind of warning people also of trusting too much. Of there are times we shouldn't trust people, and I think when we can figure that out, that helps us. I just was talking to a friend that said, "I think my gut is broken. Like I don't make good decisions about this." What would you say to someone that feels that way, that just goes, I just keep choosing the wrong people to be friends with, the wrong people to date? What would you say to someone that just doesn't trust their own gut anymore?
Well, I would say I think this book is going to help you a lot because it's going to give you an
A framework.
eye-opening look
Yeah.
and framework to discover what may be some of the issues that we need to pay more attention to. But I would also say I'm going to give them some advice that my counselor gave me. And when I say it, we have to be careful how we say this, okay? But the advice my counselor gave me was that my picker was broken.
Mm,
And that's kind of a funny statement, but here's what the truth is. If I would have gotten out of my divorce and decided that I needed another person to comfort me past the loneliness during that season of healing, then I would have compromised what was best for me because I would have been so desperate to need another relationship that I probably would have chosen someone just like my ex-husband. I would have chosen someone at the same level of health that I was in that broken place after my divorce. And I didn't want to choose more dysfunction like that because what that does is dysfunction. If we've lived in it for a long time, that starts to feel normal. And we're
yeah,
going to gravitate and pick people that feel normal to us. So
right.
that's why I had to hit the pause button. I had to work on me. I had to address some of the issues. Look, it wasn't my fault what happened,
Yeah.
but it was now my problem that I had to address the fallout inside of me because I wanted to be healthy enough to attract other healthy people. And
Mm,
that took time. And it took a lot of intentionality on my part. And it took the willingness to be able to sit alone with my own thoughts and be okay. My counselor, Jim, one time told me that that's a good definition of someone who's mentally healthy is that they can sit alone with their own thoughts and be okay.
mm,
And it took me a long time to get there. But then once I did, I started to get healthier and started to acquire more tools to make better decisions, started to dig into God's word and recognize, yeah, love can be unconditional, but trust should never be unconditional.
mm,
And I started to really get some emotional fortitude and spiritual confidence about what it actually means to be a Christian woman who loves Jesus, but who also can draw healthy boundaries with other people and learn not to trust everyone. When I started doing that, I started attracting people at a completely different level of health. And that's what I would say to, your friend who's struggling. I don't think that her gut is broken. I just think there's brokenness inside that needs to be addressed and it can be addressed and it can get better. And I really do think that I want to trust you, but I don't is going to be a great tool to help people do just that.
yeah. I want to go back to something you just said. You said, I had to figure out how to be alone with my thoughts. Can you take us back even to where you would sit and what that looked like for you? Like, just because I think that's true for a lot of people right now. They're very convicted and they feel like they don't know how to do that. What did that look like when it was uncomfortable for you?
I'm so glad you asked this question, Jenny. Our trauma is not just what happened to us. It is also the story we tell ourselves because of what happened to us.
Mm,
And so I had to pay attention to not just thinking about what happened to me, but what story am I now telling myself because of what happened to me? Because that's where the real damage can be
yeah.
multiplied exponentially. And so I had to watch things like, okay, my husband betrayed me and made me feel crazy. So now what story am I telling myself? I could easily tell myself the story that maybe your friend is saying, and that is like my gut was broken, my discernment was broken, you
I mean,
know,
which is basically saying it's my fault
it's my fault. Right.
or something crazy that was not your fault.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the number one things I had to wrestle with is, am I crazy? Because when there's that level of deception and gaslighting and you know something is off, but you're told it's okay over and over for years and years, the story I kept telling myself was, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am crazy. And he just couldn't take it anymore. And so, of course, he ran to the arms of another woman.
Mm,
Right. But when I started to unpack that, I'm like, no, I wasn't crazy. I was truthful. I saw things and I knew things. And so it wasn't just about his betrayal, but I betrayed myself because I let someone else say to me, that's not true, when I very much knew it was true. And
mm,
that was a lot. It was also a lot for me to sit with my own self and admit some things that I needed to work on. I think when you've been betrayed and hurt really, really deeply, it's too painful at first to acknowledge that there were things about you that were broken too, right? But when I sat alone with my own thoughts, I recognized, man, I am codependent. I'm a very independent person.
yeah.
But I definitely participate in codependency. And for me, what that looks like is, Jenny, I need you to be okay so I can feel okay. So what can I do to make you okay? Because I really want to feel okay, okay? That's that
Right.
dysfunctional dance of codependency for me. I was also a classic enabler. I was
Yeah.
just so utterly convinced that if I worked hard enough on this other person, that they would eventually come around. But the damage was that I was working harder on them than they were willing to work on themselves. And it was just a completely futile pursuit. And in the process, my own emotional health and stability was being damaged more and more and more. So there were things like I had to acknowledge I have codependency tendencies, I am a classic enabler, so I have to be really careful with not wanting to jump in and fix other people. And so a lot of those things, when I sat alone with my own thoughts, it was not just the story I was telling myself, but it was also recognizing there are things I need to work on for me.
Yeah. It's amazing. So, to the person that's listening, that's hanging on every word and saying, okay, I want to heal. I want to close with just you getting a chance to just speak directly to them and also to pray for them, Lysa.
Absolutely. In the book, I wrote this poem, and it's about being brave. But in the poem, what I write is, being brave is not something you feel, it's something you do. You
Mm,
do brave things, not because you feel like you have the capability to do these
yeah.
extraordinary things, because you do brave things, because if you don't, something's going to die inside of you.
Mm,
I guess I just want to speak straight to the heart of someone. I know you have been broken, been hurt.
mm,
There have been friendship breakups that caught you completely off guard. There's been people who have spoken lines over you that have become lies that you believe, that then become liabilities in your future relationships. And all those things are worth tending to. You are worth more
mm.
than what other people have said about you or done to you. And God does have a good plan for you. I would have never dreamed that my life could look remotely like it looks today. But I pray that my story gives you great hope, that I walk through the pit of hell. I often tell people I licked the floor of hell and barely lived to tell about it.
Mm.
And while I wouldn't wish that on anyone, if I can make it through, so can you. And the outcome of where my story went was so unexpected, and your story outcome is going to be unexpected too. There's no prescription or formula. We can't figure it out. I wish so much I could run ahead in the future, see all the good that God's going to do in your life, and then come back and give you a book report, because it would be a stellar book report. I can't do that. But that's the beauty of trusting God and walking forward in faith. So here's my prayer. I pray that you would get up every day and pray this: God, I want to see you. God, I want to know you. God, I want to hear you. And God, I follow hard after you wherever I go. And before my feet even hit the floor today, I say yes to you. I'm not going to try to run ahead and figure out how all of this is going to look tomorrow.
Yeah.
But today I'm going to recognize my job is to be obedient to you. Your job is everything else. So I trade my will for thy will, because I'm so confident God will.
Mm.
Now, today, give me someone to forgive, someone to bless, and open my eyes to rich evidence of your goodness and faithfulness all around me. And that's a prayer that God will answer every single day. Every day, some fool's going to bump into your happy, and you're going to be like, oh, I actually prayed for you today. I already pre-forgave you. So just because you laid down an offense doesn't mean I have to pick it up, carry it with me, and let it ruin my whole day. You do you, boo, but I have
Right.
forgiven you, right?
Totally.
And then God, send me someone to bless. You know, it's beautiful when we're going through our own heartbreak to get outside of our needs and meet the needs of another person. And it's simple. Just show me someone to give a little bit of my time or a little bit of my encouragement or a little bit of my money to. And when we make that connection, this is the person that God sent today. We remember how intimately involved God is in our everyday
Right.
life. And
So
that's a
good.
that's a prayer that God will answer every single day. And then God, open my eyes to rich evidence of your goodness and your faithfulness all around me. Sometimes we limit our view of God down to him doing the big, big miracles. And when he doesn't do the big miracle today, we can so easily start to wonder, is God trustworthy? But no, we got to flip that. We got to say, yeah, man, God can do big miracles, but more often than not, he's just going to walk me through today. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to intentionally look for, there's evidence of God's goodness, no matter how small it is. There's evidence of God's faithfulness, no matter how small it is. And when we start to make these connections, we experience God right now, today. We know he's with us. We know he's for us. Man, that's the path to healing. That's what it means to do brave until you become brave.
Amazing. Okay, Lysa, will you close in prayer? And again, the book is called I Want to Trust You, But I Don't. Tensions we feel every day in our life. So yeah, pray for that person, Lysa, that really feels like this entire podcast and this book was written for her.
Lord, I lift up my friend's heart to you that's listening right now. God, I pray that you would wrap her heart in your most tender mercy, that you would speak life and love to her. God, don't let her go one more second where she believes the lie of the enemy, that she is unloved or unlovable. God, you hand designed her to be a recipient of your love and to be a conduit of love to other people. Lord, help her to remember that her life should never be reduced down to the limitations of living hurt. There is a big, glorious world out there, new possibilities that she doesn't want to miss, and a future that you have designed for her that is good. Even if it looks different, different can still be good. Lord, be with her, love her, show her, and guide her. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
We're so grateful for Lysa, her friendship, and every single episode that she has done with Jennie on the Made for This podcast is one of y'all's favorites because of her wise, practical, compassionate wisdom on some really challenging topics. So don't miss her newest book that just came out October 8th called I Want to Trust You, But I Don't. Moving forward when you're skeptical of others, afraid of what God will allow, and doubtful of your own discernment. I know I could use that in a couple different areas of my life. It's relevant to all of us in some way. So go grab a copy. We will make sure to put a link in the show notes, and we'll see you next time for another episode of the Made for This podcast.